Good afternoon, folks. We're here tonight at Johnson Central High School campus, and we're going to have a public forum tonight to openly discuss the future high school facilities here in Johnson County. I'd like to welcome all of you. I'd also like to welcome those that are joining us by live feed. Should be an exciting evening. Hopefully we'll get a lot of input and comments from the group, clarifications. If you do have questions, please feel free to ask throughout the evening. We want everybody leaving this facility tonight with all the knowledge they possibly can have about the new high school and the direction and vision that we have for our county school system. Our goal is to have the finest educational facilities for the students, because the students are the future of Johnson County, East Kentucky, and all of the Commonwealth. And Johnson County has done a great job of producing some outstanding graduates. As a matter of fact, I think all the graduates of our school system are outstanding. We had our Hall of Fame event this past weekend, and it was very touching to see the success that our students have had through the education they've received here at Johnson Central throughout the years. So, with that said, I would like to introduce three individuals from Sherman Carter. And first is Justin McSelfish, Allison Cummings, and Hunter Halfhill. And they are here to help facilitate and answer anything that you might have. And we are wide open, very transparent. We just want the best for the best and for our future. Thank you.
So thank you everyone for being here tonight. What we want to do is about over the next hour, we'd like to try to keep it to an hour, but we want to get everybody's input. What you will see in front of you tonight are a number of different categories that we use to start to just kind of use as kind of jumping off points, if you will, for different categories, different things that we typically see in high schools that we have developed and designed across the Commonwealth. We'll walk through each one of those categories and just kind of tell you just a little bit about. So the first sheet, the one down toward Allison there, you'll see four categories, and they're more about kind of broader based ideas, the overarching goals for the facility. There may be an idea that you have about what this facility should become, or one goal that it may have in your mind. Any site ideas, how the building should be sited, what site features you think should be incorporated. Image is the next one, and that can be anything from kind of the exterior identity of the facility, what it should look like, whether or not it should take on more of a contemporary feel or more traditional feel. Everybody's got, no house is the same, and we don't expect this to be a vanilla school either. So we want to get your input on all of those thoughts. Another one on the first sheet there is organization. And in organization, what we do is we look at, does this school want to be organized the way schools have typically been organized at the high school level? Or does it want to be organized more like McCracken County High School in Paducah that we did? That is a large high school of around 2,100 students, but it's broken down into smaller learning communities so that the high school age kids don't feel overwhelmed by a larger student body. So there may be some thoughts that you might have about how the building is organized. The next four categories there are curriculum. And we always say that instruction drives construction. We want to hear maybe some ideas that you may have about how the curriculum may be able to integrate with what the building form takes on. 21E is kind of our design philosophy. It's at the core of everything we do at Sherman Carter Barnhart. And it's the idea that every dollar that you all spend as a district toward the energy consumption that your building, the energy that your building will use, is also used, the same pot of money that is used to pay your energy bill also pays the same fund pays the school salaries for teachers, and it can also be used for other things like integrating technology back into the classroom. So we like to look at ways that we can actually make the building footprint more compact, make the building volume more compact, just a number of ideas to make the building energy usage as low as we can make it so that you guys are having a good long-term impact and being able to put more money back into the classroom to directly benefit the students of Johnson County. Then the next two items there are building interior. You may have some ideas about maybe it's some things that you've seen elsewhere that you think would be great to integrate into the building interior, or some ideas that even from this school that you would like to see carried over. And then the next item there is classrooms. This building obviously has a very traditional classrooms, with kind of a teaching wall and rows of desks. Modern classrooms are a little bit different, and we can talk about kind of what your vision is for the instruction within that classroom volume. The next four are more related to kind of the public areas within the new building. The media center. Media centers are much different than they have been years past. It's no longer a place to park books, but it really becomes about the integration of technology and really a hub for the entire building. So we'll want to hear kind of what thoughts you might have for that. Likewise, the cafeteria and kitchen. You guys have done a great job here with adapting to furniture, allowing kids to have multiple options as far as seating heights, and just a number of different things that you've done here within this space. You may have ideas about the new space moving forward as well. And then the gymnasium, obviously, that being in Kentucky, and there's a game, I think, sometime tonight, so we'll want to be sure everybody gets home for that. But in Kentucky, gymnasium spaces are usually very important and prominent, not only for competition sporting events, but as a public forum space and a public event space as well. So we'll want to hear your ideas for that space. Administrative area would be primarily the front office area and how we develop that. So if you're a school administrator or a parent or even a student that wants to have some thoughts or some ideas you would want to relay to us, we'd love to hear those. And then the last 6 items there are very important items. The one is kind of generic. It's special features. If some of these are kind of catch-all too. If they don't fit in another category, we can put them in those. Community use, I mentioned the gymnasium, the fact that that's a community center. Schools throughout the country are really the heart of each and every community that we work in. So we want to be sure that we can identify the community use aspects and locate those areas properly so that they can be accessed by the public. But then the next category, for instance, also be secure. Safety and security has to be at the forefront of everything we do nowadays, and we all know that. So we'll want to think through kind of your security ideas, and we can also bring our ideas to the table as well. Then technology is another category. Obviously, technology continues to change and improve, and it's definitely impacted the educational environment and the opportunities that all of our students have seen, especially over the last 18 months as we've been in the midst of a global pandemic. It's allowed our students and our kids to really be able to continue to move forward while facing challenges that we've all had to deal with. And then college and career readiness, and then finally athletics. So a number of categories there. Just to tell you a little bit about the process. So as I mentioned, we will walk through each category. As you come up with an idea, and you can step to the mic if you want. If you want to just throw up your hand, and we'll get a mic to you, or just make sure you speak loudly. But every idea that you have will actually go on a card, and these cards will all be placed on the board up front. And as we go through the night, we'll continue to develop and kind of develop this list as we move across through the categories. And you'll be surprised, several months from now, when we open the doors to a new facility, we'll look back on this night, and I will guarantee you that there will be cards up there that we'll all point to and say, I remember the first night when we met with the public to discuss the new facility, and that was on the board that night. So this is just a very good process that we have tried to develop just to gather input. It's more about us listening to you all and the ideas that you have instead of us bringing ideas to you. So we'd like for you to really get involved tonight. Be sure to share your ideas. If you don't share ideas, I'll make Hunter dance or something to entertain you, but some way or another, we will try to pull the information out of you. So with that, does anybody, if you're the first to speak, I'll let you pick the category. So anybody have a place you want to start? I'm going to come to you. Anything? All right.
You mentioned gymnasium and you mentioned basketball tonight.
Yep.
So is there a standardized size of gym? And we've got a big gym here. So can you talk a little bit about that small aspect?
Yep. So typically the KDE model program, and you may hear me reference the KDE model program. The Department of Education basically says for any size school, so we have been looking at about a 825 student school that would be 10 through 12, or a full-size school would be 1,100 students. So for any 1,100 student school in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, they expect it to have a certain number of classrooms. The gymnasium or PE component should be of a certain size. That is typically, I think, around 12,000 square feet for a high school at the 1,100 student capacity. Within that 12,000 square feet, it's not just the gymnasium proper, but it would also include the support spaces such as locker rooms, coaches' offices, storage within that piece. So there are a number of different things. Typically, KDE likes to see you the seating capacity be about 2 times the student body capacity, but they will allow you to increase that. Some of the school districts that we work with, I think in part because of the multi-use nature of the gymnasium, will actually look to KDE also includes a locally identified program allowance that is basically some built-in allowable space where you can shift that space toward different categories. So like if you said, well, 12,000 square feet is not quite enough, we'd like to make our gym just a little bit bigger, you can take some of that locally identified program space and apply it toward making your gymnasium slightly bigger. You may also say, well, I'd rather have a couple more classrooms, and you can also use that for the same thing. But yeah, about 12,000 square feet is typical of a PE program component for 1,100 student high school.
Thank you.
Yes.
You mentioned the storage space that's located inside the gymnasium. Something that I help out with a lot of home games, martial sports. Also been a Phillips teacher here at school too. Would there be a way to create a storage place for sports tables, anything that's pulled out for a game that can be put away along the way in an area that doesn't necessarily have its own quote unquote designated place, but can be tucked away in a way that is hidden, taken care of, locked up, and can't be touched by anyone else?
Right. Yes, and that's a great idea. I will mention, especially when we look at kind of multi-use spaces, the key to good multi-use, multi-purpose spaces is allowing for flexibility. So a way that you can move furniture or different things that you may have in that space out of the way to use it for a different use. So those types of storage components are vital to those multi-purpose type spaces. The other thing that I'll mention is that I talked about the KDE model program. There are no provisions within the KDE model program for actual storage other than there's a custodial storage which is like 250 square feet, and there is PE storage. But outside of that, there are no provisions for storage. So when you see schools across the Commonwealth, I live with a teacher. I'm married to a teacher of some 24, 25 years, and there's never enough space to store your stuff. That's partly the reason, because there's no storage. Actually counts against you a little bit, because you have to have so much program space to gross area. Other thoughts? Great comment. Yes.
Thinking about another feature, I guess it's following special features and for community use. An auditorium, I think, is a very important aspect of a future society.
Yep.
For performances, plays, choir, also for class meetings, also for community use.
Right.
Any kind of special events, presentations, those kind of things.
Guess it's halfway between special features and community.
We're gonna make it its own category.
There you go, even better.
Yeah. Yes.
I would like to see every sport and sport activity have their own locker room instead of a shared space.
Okay. Yes.
Another quick question is, how will this facility be tied in with the leadership and energy environment design? Has there been thought put into that, and can it be included as we go along?
Are you saying lead? Yes. So one of the things, and this kind of goes back to the 21E, kind of our core design philosophy. We will typically design everything as energy efficient as we can, and then whether or not we pursue LEED is kind of icing on the cake. But we can definitely look at pursuing LEED accreditation if that's something that has interest. It is frequently used across the state of Kentucky, and it would be. Typically, we'll do some preliminary testing to make sure that it makes sense. Obviously, we'll do some preliminary drilling to see if we're running into voids or groundwater, a number of things that make it more challenging. But geothermal is a very popular option and probably the most energy efficient HVAC system that we use in the state.
Athletics.
Yes.
The gym is used for everything. And it's you have to redo the floor every year. And is there any way that you could put a training center for 3 sports? Auxiliary gym.
Yeah.
Auxiliary gym.
Yeah. So some of the things that we have seen, one, auxiliary gyms are very popular. So that's another way to kind of gain another multi-purpose space, especially for things such as wrestling, archery. You can just never have enough gym space.
Count against you down towards the 12,000?
It will count within the 12,000. But the other thing that we have done is even in spaces like a cafeteria, we can take the cafeteria, make the volume higher, and again, gain a potential another multi-purpose space, not by making it any bigger, but making the volume taller, which doesn't necessarily count against us there. So that's a very efficient way for us to kind of gain some flexibility in program use.
Have they discussed the pool?
That we have not discussed the pool, but the only thing I'll say about pools are a couple of things. One, they're very challenging for the district as far as maintenance and operations, both in the upkeep, chemicals and different things like that, but also the operations, the energy that it requires to heat and condition that space. It's very, very, very expensive. It's the least energy efficient thing that you can do, and if it's the most probably. It's the thing that you could put in your building that would have the highest energy bill that you could possibly think of.
Well, could you switch it on solar?
You could, but it's more the it's not really the pool mechanics and everything, it's the dehumidification and everything that requires of the space because it's such a corrosive environment. Even with the kind of salt water and some of the different water that different water things that they do nowadays, it's still a very difficult, harsh environment.
But the school system has a pool. And, I think it's used quite a bit, and you've got a good athletic program.
Yep.
I mean, we've got kids that's done really well.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider. Yes.
Cafeteria, you mentioned there a minute ago about, up in size, so or height. So I imagine, what is it tied to square footage wise for an 1,100 square foot off the top of your head, or approximately, you guys know?
Allison's going to double check me. I think it's typically around 6,000 square feet.
So, okay, so I'm just trying to, in comparison to what we're in now, I didn't know if we're looking at a similar or a larger space.
I would guess that this space is a little undersized.
That's what I was thinking.
So about 6,000 square feet. Look at that. Yeah. Right. And we can design it in a way so, like this space, if you didn't have center columns and you had a higher volume, you could use this space for a number of different activities if you had to. Yep. Yep. What other thoughts? Very good feedback.
Speaking of the auditorium that Mr. Cochran had mentioned, is there a square footage limitation on the auditorium? Or is that a space that is different?
There is. Vanna? 4,700 square feet.
Smaller than the cafeteria. That's unusual.
It is.
Do you include kitchen and food prep? All
No, kitchen would be a separate square footage area, but yeah.
That seems small for an auditorium.
It does. But the one thing that they will do is typically auditoriums are smaller. They'll typically throughout the state, an auditorium won't even seat the full student body. It might seat half or a third or something like that.
Hart County's like 500.
Right.
Big, isn't it?
So question about that.
Yeah.
Let's just say that you had a donor that wanted to dedicate a set amount of money toward that auditorium. Would that, so KDE would allow extra
Yeah.
building, extra square footage if it was dedicated, donated, dedicated?
Yes. And here's the other thing that I'll mention is obviously everybody in this room has a budget, whether it's your household, this school district has a budget, and we've got a budget for the project that we'll establish in working with the district. KDE will allow you to build whatever the model program says the building area should be. It can actually be 25% larger. So if you said, well, I want to make the auditorium 25% larger than KDE, so they will allow you to do that. And then on top of that, if you said, well, that doesn't quite get me there, again, they have that flexible piece, the locally identified program space that you can apply to different things to again, give you some flexibility as well. So if you wanted to make an auditorium larger, and that was a district goal, we could work with you to make sure that
If it
happens.
was outside money, that could be its own entity of itself.
That's correct, it could be.
You did mention creating greater volume in the cafeteria. Can that be done in the auditorium as well?
It could be,
Your seating could go up.
yeah.
Have a second tier.
Yeah, and we have done that too. We've even done where the kind of mezzanine or balcony level can even be built where it can be subdivided off and used for another multi-purpose type space, whether it be like a lecture type space or some other options.
I've got to get a son to Huntington to soccer practice, so I want to throw this out there real quick. I know other people are going to have some things to put in.
Sure.
We talked earlier about the uniqueness of our building in that we are a totally integrated career and technical center, which is one of the 10 largest in the state.
Yeah.
Inside a high school. And obviously that works well for us and we like the integrated model, but clearly
And I really think that that is one of the greatest opportunities that this district has. It's something that not a lot of other districts in the state really have the ability to do, because they can't do a career center at the same time that they're doing a high school. And you guys really have the possibility here to kind of integrate those from the start, which is really exciting. Yes.
As a continuation on the auditorium, could we make sure that there's a large enough backstage area? The theater program here has been using the SIP theater mostly, and that has a limiting backstage area.
Right.
If we could have a larger area with dressing rooms for boys, girls, and then a separate one in case someone needs to have a separate.
Sure.
I think we need to definitely have that for the efficiency of the program.
Right. Great ideas.
Just another add-on to auditorium, we'd love to see some type of recording studio.
Okay.
Go along with that inside of it.
Yeah.
This technology, what, Tom, what was the governor when he come up here with, what was it, $10 million? I don't know if I followed everything I should know about that. Was that just for a technology center?
That's for the CTE that we've been talking about, that's the Career Tech Center inside our high school.
Like, Danny, that would be, like, for instance, you know, back a long time ago, we used to just have, like, your culinary, your agriculture, you know, some of your base program. Well, now we've added engineering, biomedical sciences, the telemedia, like Todd's program, we've allied health and nursing, aviation, we've added all these programs, so we have among the most programs in the state. So the 10 million is to help build the career technical components of this new facility.
Okay, so it's not just for a separate building and.
Well, that's what we're talking about. We don't really want a separate outside building. Some places do that. We really want it to be integrated, and even like Tom was saying, maybe you have your culinary close to your kid, you know, maybe your telemedia is close to your media center. You know, there's things that we can try to, components that we can build to try to make sure it's relevant, but connected to what we do.
Okay, well, I didn't know if it was gonna be a technology classroom, you know,
It's a good question, though.
Yep.
I mean, really, I don't think a lot of people understand what all we offer. I mean, the things we've done in the last, 8 to 10 years is pretty.
Right now, Danny, we've got kids going one period to AP class, and next period they're going to nursing. That nursing class is in an old regular classroom though, so we want to be able to build classrooms that kids can utilize, more effectively the program in class.
okay, well, yeah, that's.
Does that $10 million affect like our overall budget? Do we?
Sure.
I mean, so that doesn't take away from what we could have potentially got for other things, so that just helps us
That
increase.
is an additional $10 million. Yes.
In the back.
On that note, just because it talks about the nursing program, right now, the classroom is like all included in lab. So I was wondering if there would be, maybe have separate lab spaces, that's so distracting sometimes in the time of lecture. You know, I have those things set, like the classroom section gets from that section.
Right. And did you say nursing program? Yeah. So what we will do is, in addition to the facilities branch, which reviews all of the, I'll say, traditional educational program for a high school, we will also work with the career and technical education folks in Frankfort to make sure that each one of the programs aligns with what their requirements are. A few years ago, it was kind of the wild, wild west. They really didn't have a program developed. Since then, they have gone back and developed programs for each pathway. Typically, it will have a laboratory space. It will have a dedicated classroom. And then there are also an office, a space allocated for an office, and a space allocated for storage for each program pathway. Now, I will tell you that the CTE folks do allow a little greater flexibility in the pathway, depending on what local industry and local community interest may be. So if you say, well, nursing is our most popular pathway, then KDE, CTE folks may say, well, we want to make that program just a little bit bigger than it would typically be by program, just so it can accommodate that many students. So we will work through those as well. Yes.
I'm part of the Johnson Central FFA chapter / agricultural science, and we have like greenhouses and farms and the shop down here. And the greenhouse, we love it. It's a part of the community, in my opinion. We sell plants, we grow plants. It's one of the big things we have down here. A big
Sure.
moneymaker, and I'm the treasurer.
Big fundraiser for you guys.
And we have the farm too, and that helps so much in agriculture.
Right.
It goes hand in hand. I mean, farming is what's in FFA, Future Farmers of America. And the shop, it goes hand in hand. We have like small engine power, welding team, small engine team. We have all them teams. And we just like a bigger shop and more security. Like the farm, we had a couple incidents over the summer of people coming into the farm. We had to call the cops a couple times, and that's something we like to keep. We like to keep on with the community like we are right now. I love the community. This is a great community in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say that.
No, it's great, great input. Other thoughts? Yes.
What is the typical size of the main office?
So I can tell you by program, it's around 2,100 square feet, which is never enough in any building. So we'll typically end up probably somewhere around double that. It's just never enough.
That includes all the principal's offices?
Correct. So typically within that space, there would be offices dedicated for school administrators. There's also a dedicated space for the site-based decision-making council. So that's kind of more like a conference room type space. Is around 270 square feet. Obviously, reception area so that people can come in, kind of secure entry and have access to that without having access to the rest of the school. There's also typically area for counselors within that space, as well as school nursing staff. So, and nursing, especially over the last 18 months and some of the challenges we've all faced, it's kind of morphed. It used to be kind of a smaller type space with maybe a restroom attached to it and a place to store medicine that the students may need throughout the day. Those types of spaces have started to morph into more of like nursing and first aid suites, and have kind of taken on a life of their own as well. But those are most of the components that you would typically see in that administrative piece.
Well, in the reception area, right now, we just have a couple desks.
Yep.
But I'd like to see something that, a counter or something that separates the students where they're not right on top, like.
Yep. So that is typically something that we pay a lot of attention to. One, we will want to kind of build in a nice reception area. One, it's kind of the first impression that each visitor has, but two, we also want to make sure that that space is appropriately sized so that, as you say, people can come in, but they're not overwhelming those folks that are trying to work within that space. And there's plenty. It's also typically a space where you've got students coming to the office for different reasons. You've got visitors. So we do want to make sure that that space is appropriately sized and security is looked at as well.
That take into account, you said nursing station, the youth services center, because now that's how we operate.
Yeah, so that is typically a 300 square foot, and again, it typically ends up slightly larger than that. But the youth service center typically will be not necessarily at the front door, but somewhere around the front door typically. But they like to see a dedicated separate entrance for that. Just so people can, if they have clothing needs or there are a lot of different needs that youth service center serves. So they like to kind of be discreet about that location and allow people to access that maybe without coming through the front door and being there for everybody to see. What? Yes.
I would like to talk about the library and media center. Is it possible to have separate, like, rooms for study groups or student organizations? supervisory standpoint, you want to be able to see. So
Right.
my thoughts in my head just automatically are like glass walls, but divided spaces.
That's a very good point, and we've done a lot of those. With any, again, media centers are no longer a place just to park books. You know, they've really become these kind of technology hubs in the heart of the school. The other thing that we've seen is even breaking down some of that media center square footage and maybe even doing remote pieces of technology throughout the building. So in addition to kind of your media hub, you might also have different kind of satellite pieces as well. Just again, to start kind of integrating technology and media and that integration throughout the facility. Other thoughts? Yes.
I think maybe going to the far left, back to the goals, it's kind of a broad thought or a broad idea. You know, we've had such great success over the past 10 years, and that's been, you know, terrific. And obviously with the high school, a goal in my mind would be to draw people in, but not only to draw the students in and their families in, but to keep them here within this community. Like, instead of people, the students that graduate, yes, we talked about they're successful, but a lot of times they go on to Lexington, Georgetown, Frankfurt, Louisville, out of state, other places. What I would envision or a goal within this new school being a place in which they graduate from here. Yes, they go on to college, but then they want to come back and send their own kids to this high school in the future. I think that would be a very strategic goal within the new high school as a draw, keeping people within this community.
Not so much about the building itself, but
We've all been to other schools where transportation access, getting in and out of the property is very difficult. And I don't know if like access to 23 will be a possibility, but any of us that have ever been during a football game and trying to get in and out, or any kind of game, if it had plenty of access points to get on and off
Sure.
the property, would be helpful.
Sure. So we will start working through kind of a master plan of the site very soon. But one of the things that Katie will expect to see is good separation of car and bus traffic. So that's very important, especially on a high school campus where you not only have parent pickup and drop off, you've also got bus traffic, but you also have a third component really, and that's student drivers. So it can be very challenging on site. So you want to be sure that it's well organized and you have kind of spaces where you can keep everything separate and kind of orderly, if you will. Yes.
I'd like to see a place where we could showcase our successes that we've had. I mean, as you see, all the trophy cases, we've had people go on to play professional sports, college sports, academics, all this stuff. I mean, I'd like to see a place where we can showcase our Hall of Fame, our trophies, athletic and academic and all that. You know, again, drawing on the community part where people can come in, see our success, and, you know, make this a place where they want to send their kids to.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a carpentry instructor, welding instructor, and the ag instructor. One thing we talked about in the past, building for our shops, where we centrally located, if there's any way that we could locate a restroom or bathroom close to that area where the kids can clean up before they go to, like if they get dirty before they, at least they can clean up before they go to the English class.
Right.
Or math class. Would that be feasible?
Yes, and typically in the new pathway for carpentry and welding and all of those, they will actually have specific requirements as far as, you know, what are the cleanup requirements, you know, adequate sinks, access to sinks and restrooms even. But those are all things that we'll want to work with you guys to make sure that we've got each one of those pathways developed properly. And we'll get both guidance from CTE folks as well as from you guys and maybe even local industry partners to kind of think through how each one of those pathways should be developed. But great comment.
It's a good point about the restroom, just having them accessible overall to the
Yep.
gymnasium, to the rest of the school. And we've lived with for 50 years with two.
Right.
So, so
Yeah. And the one thing I mentioned is, so what Katie will expect to see an efficiency factor for a high school. So the program space, which is the assignable space, like the number of classrooms, the administrative area, the PE, all of those space go, those are assignable space versus non-assignable space, such as storage, restrooms, mechanical type spaces. All of those spaces, you really only have around 24% of your building or 26% of your building that you can utilize for those purposes. So we do want to be sure that we've got an adequate number of restrooms, but we also want to be strategic in the placement of those so that they can be available for public use if need be, or in the proper locations for student use as well. Yes?
We have a large faculty, we also need more faculty bathrooms, and well-placed faculty bathrooms.
Agreed.
And our staff is about 80% female, 20% male, and we have the same number of faculty bathrooms, which is one.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
That becomes problematic on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Hey, Judge, when you
Yes.
speak of that, have you ever had designs, rather than have the male-female bathrooms with multiple, facilities inside each one, several individual, bathrooms?
We have. So the one thing that, they're more gender neutral type spaces, but the plumbing code has yet to catch up in the state of Kentucky. The thing that typically becomes a little problematic, but it counts for the entire facility. So, but it's the urinals, the number of urinals, there are still number requirements. But as long as we think about the urinal numbers for the entire facility, we can work through that as well. Yes?
When we talk about safety, I'm curious on how many exterior doors will be in the facility, and will all of our buildings be connected where kids don't have to travel outside and going from class to class?
Yeah, so typically we would like to see, that a student doesn't have to go outside to come back indoors. One, we typically see that, we want to be sure that that student can be monitored at all times. And for instance, not have the ability to go out that door and then back in another door, and while he's out there, he's going to his car for some reason or something like that. Just a number of things for security reasons that you don't want to happen. As far as the number of doors, we go back to the 21E. Our core design philosophy is, again, in our quest to make the building as energy efficient as possible, we'll also look at a comprehensive look at the design solution to make sure that it is as compact a footprint and as compact a volume as we can be. Along with that compact footprint, typically becomes limiting the number of access points so that we can provide adequate safety and security. Make sure that all visitors are coming through the front door so that they can be tracked and monitored. And then also making sure that we don't have, 50 doors around the facility that have to be monitored. A lot of doors that may be used just for egress purposes. It may not even have exterior trim on the outside, no door handle on the outside. It may just be an easy way for folks to get out in the event of a fire. But we will pay close attention to that, because not only is it good for safety and security long term, but the fewer doors that you have in the facility, the lower your upfront costs can be as well.
One other question.
Yes.
For our shops, we'll probably have bay doors for all of our shops. Is there any way, I know we've got a little fenced-in area now that if we're doing projects, it's pretty weather, we can get out. Will we still have a fenced-in area around?
Yeah, so typically that's what we see still. And what it does is it also allows you guys a little exterior area so that you can screen things, especially some of the things that you're working on an everyday basis may not be the prettiest things for the public to see, but we can screen those. Not only does it screen those things from public view, for instance, but it also, again, would allow potentially the students to be outside with not having the ability to go beyond kind of an outdoor fenced area for security reasons. Yes.
We have a information technology major here, our CTE department, so I'd like to really see that amped up as far as the classroom goes, like a mock-up server that they could use to learn about servers, you know, even maybe solar panels on our building so they can learn about, you know, solar tech.
Right.
I would just really like to see that expanded upon and done well.
Those are great ideas. Yes.
I guess this kind of goes in with what Keith said with goals and making it inviting, and also maybe going into sight and image as well. You know, I would imagine seeing something that's really inviting for students. Maybe not, I don't know if futuristic is the word, but modern, in an inviting space. I know whenever I come to work in the mornings, our hallways are packed with kids waiting to be released down to their wings into their classes. So gathering places for students to hang out, maybe some charging ports, put in place. And I know that you mentioned something about, you know, maybe a 2-tier level or utilizing space differently, but allowing our students to have that space in the morning time, to be able to utilize that space during that time as well. Just an inviting of an area as you can, while at the same time getting more use out of it later.
Agreed. Yeah, we'll even look at spaces like the corridor, for instance, where you would typically just use a corridor to get from point A to point B. We'll even look at that. Is there an opportunity for an extended learning area where, you know, it might be a wide spot in the corridor for small group learning, or for someone to access a small device or something? Just, you know, any space that we can gain for educational purposes, wherever it is in the building, whether it's in the hallway or wherever, that flexibility. Yes?
I want to just expand on that. I have been in Frederick Douglass's new school in Lexington, and they have, their corridor is a large common area for students. There are some steps up, they can sit there, they can
Right.
charge their phones. So just kind of piggybacking on what George said, I think that we desperately need those common areas.
Right.
And so just to kind of piggyback on it, this is just a question. I was thinking of the cosmetics. This isn't essential things, but I was thinking about JR2. You mentioned coming in, the trophy case and all that. Has anyone had any experience with like as you're coming in, like I don't know what the correct word would be. I keep thinking like an airport or mall, like a video wall. Like you can have like a media man or like the kids who does the media, they could like have a loop with announcements, or you know, alumni talking, just having a loop all day.
Martin County has one off at the end of their corridor. It's about 10 panels or so. It's really nice.
Have you found that to be feasible?
We have seen some of that used, and it, again, in the spirit of flexibility and multi-purpose use, we've also seen kind of larger lobby type spaces where, again, you use something that's used on a daily basis for, you know, kind of school pride and announcements and that type of thing. But maybe there's also a way to combine a social stair like what you saw at Frederick Douglass with some type of media element in that space. And all of a sudden, you've got a lecture space that, again, we can capture space that you wouldn't necessarily have in that type of space within a school. Again, as we look for and build in flexibility for long-term use so that the facility can continue to grow and evolve over time as well.
What kind of facilities do you have for special needs kids?
Yeah, so typically there will be a dedicated space for kind of self-contained space for students with special needs. It would also include a space for like restrooms, facilities, as well as kind of a kitchenette type thing. That's another space that has also continued to evolve, and we've also seen kind of suites becoming more and more popular, where it's not just one dedicated classroom with a kitchenette and a dedicated toilet. It might be a few classrooms with some different type spaces where they can learn work-ready skills and a number of different things that they may need.
So moving on past that, that's what you're talking about there is more students with complex needs.
Right.
We have a high population of students who have milder needs. So it'd be nice to have a dedicated resource classroom, maybe per core.
Yep.
Core area.
Yeah, so in addition to standard classrooms, there will also be a number of resource classrooms. And we can actually look at how those are grouped or arranged, whether they're spread out throughout the building or whether they may be combined in tandem, where you could basically take a resource room by KD model program is basically a half a classroom. So you may want the ability to be able to pair two half classrooms together with an operable partition where it can be used for a larger space if you need to, or again, in that spirit of flexibility, allow you to change over time. Yep.
So kind of going back to the gymnasium, the auxiliary gymnasium, would it make more sense to kind of put our weight room and training facility kind of in that same area, that way it can be utilized more efficiently for staff and students, or maybe a separate staff wellness center in the same facility? I know I'm part of a program that has tossed around the idea of, you know, staff wellness centers, and I know some schools do have one.
There are grants for that too.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, you know, to gain teachers and to retain teachers as well.
There are grants for that.
So maybe put that kind of together, and then also with that, maybe a classroom that could be used. I teach fitness and wellness, so I have health component as well. A classroom maybe connected to that we can use it for meetings, you know, maybe some different things.
I've even seen those types of spaces, like those classrooms that may be adjacent to or kind of sitting above gymnasium space, even as hospitality rooms and different things like that for extracurricular. Yep.
We don't have a staff lounge in here at all. So not that, you know, we gather together in mass and hang out, but there's really nowhere other than just the front office to get coffee, to, you know, to eat lunch. You kind of just have to find the teacher that has the same planning as you. You gather up in a classroom. I would like to see, I'm going to shoot for the moon here because I worked in the private sector for
Tonight's about dreaming, so.
Yes. I worked in the private sector for about 8 years, and we had a staff cafeteria. So there were people that were there to make lunch for you, and you paid for it.
Sure.
But you know, you could order a panini or a wrap or whatever. It would just be nice to have staff, you know, staff amenities in that way.
Sure.
So.
Yes.
Media wall kind of thing. Could we perhaps have maybe smaller TVs around the entire school in hallways to broadcast stuff that the media team creates?
Sure.
Or sports highlights from the last week to kind of build morale around the teams. And we here have like Eagle News and things like that that could be broadcasted on there. And
sort of like a kiosk, maybe.
Sure.
Kiosk, like
also on curriculum, I think it would be good for the students to have more curriculums based on government, because students have never been more politically active than in modern today. And I feel like political science, one, or government, lawmaking, things like that, and also expansion on some studies to better educate students, like racial studies,
Sure.
or LGBTQ+ studies, things like that, that are more modern to educate people to build equality and racism, things like that, because students want to be involved. We just don't really have the resources to become involved.
Right. Yes.
Our current technical, we have a store, our business department, they operate their own store. If we were to have, our kids are out here selling t-shirts today, they looked at me and said, Mr. Shepard, this table is awful, this chair's, I'm just sitting here, can you put a banner up behind here? Is there a way to have store
Well, the nice thing, and as we talk about the integration of the CTE features with the high school curriculum, you know, we can get kind of a blending of those types of things, which is going to be great for opportunities such as you described. We have done those types of spaces where you have a dedicated school store. You know, it might be adjacent to a business classroom, but it might also be adjacent to a public space so that you can have those opportunities to sell goods and different things to the public.
We've operated coffee shops in the past. We've operated different things, but we just run out of space, and those spaces turn themselves a lot in this building.
Right.
But if we tie it just into career and technical, it kind of has a different square footage piece.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, it's, no surprise that, if you were to drive up and down 321 here from 1105 to 1235, we have a large contingency of our student population that utilize our outdoor eating space. What's the possibility of adding that as an extension to the cafeteria? That way everything's really contained within this particular area as opposed to re-entering, our main lobby out here. Or
right.
having to go through a classroom area, and then also kind of piggyback with this, with the CTE and the spacing. I've had the opportunity to go to a couple of different high schools, one in particular in another state in which their culinary department, they had, a top of the line kitchen system set up. They also, directly adjacent to that, had a smaller like restaurant type space in which they were able to utilize that. And once a week they opened up to the public and allowed them to come in. And they served various meals, like different themes each week, and they were able to use that as a fundraiser for their program.
Right. Yeah, we've even seen that kind of scenario kind of address her comments earlier about, different faculty dining experience as well. It might be that type of space might be available to teachers or administrators during certain days of the week. Yes?
I have a question that's kind of different than most of this other stuff, since it's not about dreams and all. Mine ain't really a dream. Mine's about the actually coming to the fruition of building this.
Sure.
The construction of it. When that happens, I know y'all are an architecture firm, engineer, something, with that sense. I don't know exactly what you're.
We're architects. Don't call us engineers. That's a dirty word. We got much more imagination.
This might not be a question for you. This might be something that the district has to do on their own.
Sure.
But if we're going to invest all this money into this state-of-the-art facility, you all dream something up and it's the greatest thing ever. When it comes down and the rubber hits the road, how are we going to make sure that it ends up being that? Because, you can put something together and it look nice and it not be the real deal.
Right.
So, is there some kind, do you all have some kind of like inspection type thing that you all draw it up and you make sure it's put in that way?
Yeah, so a
Because,
couple.
just the little projects that go on around here, I see that we have a lot of problems with them because everybody here's a teacher.
Sure.
Everybody here, we don't build stuff around here.
Right.
We're teachers and whatever. How do we make sure that, do we have some kind of like a third-party inspection thing, or do we have a project manager that makes sure that what we agree to is what's actually gets built?
Yeah, so a couple of things, a couple of responses I would have for that. The first one is communication is key for everything. It begins with tonight, but communication will continue throughout the design process so that it's not Justin's idea or Allison's idea or Hunter's idea, anybody on the design team. It shouldn't be our ideas about how best to operate your facility. We will sit down with your facility maintenance people, your operations people, make sure that we're designing a system that they're comfortable with and that they can operate not just on day one, but long term. But communication is going to be key from the start of this thing, from conception through completion. And then two, as we start construction, we will be here on a regular basis to make sure that the high school and the facilities are being built according to plans and specs and the design intent. But we will also involve third-party commissioning agents, which will also basically be taking an independent look at how the systems are being installed and making sure that, one, they're being installed according to plans and specs, but two, whatever you build, there are always bugs and things that have to be worked out. The sooner we can identify those things that need to be worked out in construction and resolve those as close to opening day as possible, the better. So that, once students and staff move into the building, they're not having to deal with those types of issues long term.
And I mean, that's what I was saying. I expect it to be planned again.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I ain't never been on any project that don't have change orders.
Sure.
But I'm just saying, let's not plan out this big thing and then, you can build something up to code and that's not really what was on the prints. That's not really what was on like the IFC type drawings. It
Right.
might have been what we bid out or something, but
Sure.
when it actually comes to the construction of it, make sure it gets built in there.
Yep. Yes.
I'm one of the 2 ag teachers here at the high school, and this might not necessarily be a question for you as much as it is maybe for Mr. Cochran, Mrs. Daniels, and Mr. Arms, but at what point, I mean, I have certain needs within my department. Mr. Bowling has needs that I don't know about because I'm not a carpenter. Ms. Castle has needs that are different from mine, and I don't know what those are simply because I have nothing to do with nursing. When are the individual needs of our individual departments going to be addressed and put into the plans?
Yeah. So so tonight is really about big dream ideas. As we continue through the design process, we'll first start with schematic design, which is basically how the campus is going to develop, how the building will develop, how it'll be kind of laid out broad, like a 30,000 foot view. As we continue to design and work and develop each and every one of the spaces, I would imagine that we will sit down with each one of the departments, the school administration, some of the staff representatives, to start to integrate your desires and needs for each one of those spaces and departments and get your input for those as well. So it's definitely not like tonight, this is your chance to develop your space and sorry you missed the boat, you're out of luck. Yes.
Justin, to the gentleman that asked about construction, you might mention the state's requirements for special inspections. That might alleviate a little bit of his fear.
Yeah, so in addition to kind of the building code, the state also has Chapter 17 special inspection requirements. So all of, there are certain construction activities that have to be inspected by a third party. Typically, it's the same party that's responsible for the geotechnical investigation, which would tell us kind of what the underlying geological conditions are of the site. They'll also be involved in construction materials testing, inspecting things like welds and how the rebar is tied and just what the water content in the concrete is just throughout the construction. And that, again, would be a third-party review that's contracted directly with the school district, but will work in close conjunction with the design team and the contractor throughout construction. Yes. I'm going to come, I'm coming back to you next.
Got a question on
Yeah.
that. Have we looked as far as I know we looked at the location of the building, but the angle, as far as the school goes, heating and cooling, major expense, lighting.
Yep.
Taking advantage, positioning the school, to take advantage of natural light, different types of materials like for the winter time that would absorb the heat. And have we gotten as far as looking into stuff like that?
We haven't yet, but that will definitely be something that we look at.
Help save the heating and cooling.
Site orientation, how we site the building and place the building on site. We typically like to get the long axis of the building oriented due south and due north so that we can take advantage of things such as solar heat gain at certain times of the year. Also, even small things like vision windows that face due south or due north, it's a lot easier to control glare in those spaces than it is for something that faces east or west. So that we don't have to depend on mechanical things such as blinds and shades and those types of things that have to be shut because we didn't site the school properly, and the nice big windows that allow natural light in now have to be shut off with blinds and shades because the glare's just too bad. So we will definitely look at all of those things.
I just want to add a suggestion to what she mentioned earlier about the teacher's lounge. And pardon me if you've already addressed this with the kids, but I think it would be great, especially considering I think everybody's pretty much dealt with something over the last year and a half. It'd be nice to have a space for the teachers in the lounge for like chaplain services, mental wellness, just a place where them and someone else can get together, kind of what you may have 4 or 5 people in the lounge, but you need some one-on-ones with people. So
Sure.
just carve out a little space maybe, lounge more, I think, because they're the ones taking care of the kids.
Right.
So sometimes, they'll put their brave face on, but they need, even if they're going to go vent,
Sure.
just having a space.
Yeah, it's been challenging for everybody over the last 18 months, and I think that the challenges that the teachers and staff have faced shouldn't go unnoticed either.
I think
Yes.
this goes a little bit toward community and athletics together. And I know we're just dreaming big tonight, but every year our athletic teams, they travel hundreds of miles to participate in tournaments and things like that. With the opportunity that we have, I think we have a great opportunity through the new high school and facilities to increase tourism, and not only to help Johnson Central, but help Johnson County and the surrounding areas as well. I don't see any reason that we can't look at, especially our outdoor facilities, athletic facilities, having enough multiple use facilities, multiple fields on the area that we have up there to where we could not host our own tournaments, bring in other teams to this area. And I think keep thinking about Gatlinburg Pittman down there in Tennessee. I know there are other draws to bring people down there, but there's no reason we can't do that here to help increase our community, our area around us, and especially tourism into this area, not only with the fields, but with the auditoriums and
Right.
everything else that we now have the opportunity to shape how we want to shape.
That's a great point. Yes.
I'd like to see a dedicated area for mental health therapy services, and maybe even a quiet room or a safe space where students can go to when experiencing anxiety issues.
Okay. Great ideas. Allison hasn't drawn the first picture tonight. She's only using words. Yes.
I think to be a little more clear about the spaces, like the structure of our building, we do what we can with it, but if we had a counselor's suite, and I don't know how that fits into your office space, but we have a kid now that can come in and go, I need to see this counselor, and they're like, okay, well, here's one office, and upstairs is another, and down the hallway is a third one.
Right.
Maybe, but having that ability to have all that built into one area that, I don't know, once again, I think about your square footage, I don't know how that happens, that everybody could actually be there together, a kid wouldn't have to come in and hunt for
Right.
20 minutes to find the appropriate person, because if the appropriate person's not where they're at, the very next door is the next appropriate person.
Yeah, I think those are valid points. And we have seen even some of those type spaces, it may make sense to have it all centrally located. It may also make sense to not just put people in different parts of the building because you have to, because you don't have any other space. But it may make sense that those parts of the buildings may be most appropriate for certain counselors or administrators even. So we've even seen, some of the administrative space even be dispersed to strategic locations throughout the building. And again, that's another one of those things that we'll work with you guys to develop and make sure we've got those planned correctly. Yes?
Can we make sure in the new facility, like the new school, that we have several hand sanitizing stations? Because even if the pandemic's over, by the time it's finished, flu season and cold and stress always is detrimental to our attendance and stuff. So if we could have stuff to where students can properly cleanse their hands and stuff before they eat or anything like that, I think that'd be great.
Great points. Other thoughts?
I think as we move forward, just small things to build on, I think Mr. Van Hoops talked about it, and some other people, all of our accomplishments, whether athletic or extracurricular club, that's very important. I also like to make sure to keep our history alive, and I'd love to look at the idea of a dedicated space or wall or area to
Yeah.
all the high schools that.
They did a little bit of that calm down board count.
Yeah.
They did that.
I think that would help keep our community strong, help us well, help them remember that they are part of what we're building, even though we're moving in the future.
Yep.
Past the airport.
That's a great point. Yeah, we've done a lot of those types of things. We've done everything from taking the center jump circle from an old wood floor in a district and using it in a new facility. We've done things like what you guys have actually done with this wall mural, taking that and using it to kind of display the heritage from across the district with the different schools over and how schools have changed over time. We've done some kind of integration of that, but there are a number of ways that we can look at to kind of not just completely look forward, but build upon the heritage and all the pride and everything that you have as a school district as well. Yes.
I think it'd be a good thing too, speaking of the tech stuff and safety and security, it's like we kind of already do it now with the safe schools, and we've all got the badges and the like IDs, staff IDs and stuff. It'd be good to have that kind of automated for even like exterior stuff, like the gates, and you know, maybe have like student IDs and stuff that they
Yep.
could use to get in certain areas. If there was a place that they had to go outside,
Right.
they just have their own IDs, like, you know, freshman Johnny Goble here, grab it and stick it up to the thing and voila, or, you know, little Tommy can go over and say, I need this, and there we go.
Right. Yes. That may definitely be a possibility.
I know your time is coming to a close. I think all of these things are very important. And to talk about what Mr. Patrick said, to draw in and retain that community. I view this as a beacon of hope for Johnson County, for Eastern Kentucky, and we want it, once completed, to be the model site. The site that everyone across the entire Commonwealth wants to come and build a model of their facilities at. And Mr. Haney talked earlier about making sure, you know, that it is what it is. This is our chance.
Right.
Most of us are once in a lifetime chance to build a new high school, and so we have to make it right, make sure it's right. So I appreciate everyone being in here and giving their input and being supportive of what we're wanting to do. It's just a very exciting time. I don't know how else to explain it other than I just feel giddy.
Yeah.
Just pumped up. So.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody's input.
Thank you, Justin. A lot of good comments tonight, suggestions. I'm going to ride on with Mr. Cochran's comment, beacon of hope, because this school is for the future of our area and for the future of our students. The comments that were made tonight are well documented, and if anybody in this group tonight, tomorrow, anytime has any other ideas or dreams, no matter how big or how little, please forward those on to Mr. Cochran. He is very open, he's very accessible, through Valerie Blair at the board office, email or call. And we want to capture everybody's thoughts to make this work. Now, this just didn't happen overnight. This vision has been going on for many years, and the current board, I want to give credit to Melvin Van Hoos, Willard Burton, William Fraley, Pierre Greer. They have been looking at this for many years, and Danny Joe has contributed a foundation for this new high school when he was an active board member, and he's still active with the school system. So thank you for your services in the past, but this isn't something that's just come about. There's been a lot of thought put into it, a lot of hours by the board members, people such as Danny Joe, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Sawyer, past superintendent, thank you for coming out tonight. There's just so many things, and this beacon of hope is something that we want the young people to want to come to school and be a part of something. Our goal is to have programs for every student in this school so that we can facilitate and help them with a career path that they love and can be successful at. If you look around this cafeteria, you'll see all the signs up. We want to cater to each and every one of these groups because each and every one of these groups are the building block of this school, the future, and our community. We are going to be having the opportunity to build the finest facility, and it's going to be in the central part of Johnson County. So I think the comments that were made tonight about tourism, utilizing the school for other activities and venues, that's going to be a given, in my opinion. But this school is for our future. I think we got to keep that in mind. The students are what it's all about. If you don't keep the students first of mind, you've lost the insight, the vision, everything that the board tries to do. We keep the students first and foremost. I want to thank all of you for coming out, students, teachers, FFA, parents, all of you, your friends of Johnson County School System. We want to enhance that friendship with you giving us input on how we can make this school system the best school system in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And as Mr. Cochran said, I love his words, a beacon of hope for the students, for the area. And we want people to come from miles around. They're already talking about our programs. Our programs are in place. Our administrators, our teachers are doing a fine job with a facility as old as we're in that was built for 700 plus students, and now we have close to 1,100 students here. So we are in a facility that we have been able to grow with the times, but we have no room to do anything. So we need the school for the students and for the future. There was a fellow that used to be very active in our community here. He's not with us anymore, but I want to close out with what Joe Taylor said to each and every child that he had ever come in contact with, and that was dream big. And we want to keep on doing that, but we can't do it without each and every one of you all helping us be the best that we can be. Thank you so much for coming out. Anything that comes up afterwards, please send to Mr. Tom Cochran. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Justin. I'm sorry. Hunter, Allison, thank you. Hey, school board members, can I get a motion to adjourn? Second. Thank you, Melvin. We got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
And then tomorrow night, we don't go till late.